Welcome to Rauta's Challenging the Classics. This time it's time to go 25 years back in time. Now, I was a relatively young guy back in the days when the album came out. That is the second album by Cradle of Filth. The thing here is, back in 1996, Cradle of Filth was pretty much getting hyped and all that stuff. Suddenly it was a band that was really like shaking the roots of extreme metal. Some people said it's not black metal, some people said quite a different thing. But the main thing here was, they were doing badass slogans. They were suddenly expanding the world of extreme metal beyond the borders of, well, trash, death, and black metal. They had this thing that was very much similar to so many black metal bands out there. You know, the kind of a screamy vocals, evil, sinister kind of melodies, very dark presence, but also very gothic presence. And with the second album, they kind of, emphasized that feeling. They kind of underlined, okay, we're gonna do something different. Already Vampire MCD, the very same year, 1996, was the first one I got back in the days and got me like the band. So when Dusk and Her Embrace, with full name more than that, it was even more expanding from that thing. And clearly already by this time the band was getting big. That is, they had really good production. They totally understood how to make interesting riffs. Not only melodies, not only synth parts, not only the high pitchy trademark kind of signature vocals, but just put everything together. Really good drummer, Nick Barker, Danny Fields, very unique presence, and also singing style, and then those keyboard parts, spoken parts, and just everything. So here we are, Cradle of Filth, from Ipswich, England, 30 years this day, or this year anyway, and Dusk and Her Embrace, with the full name Litanies of Damnation, Death, and the Darkly Erotic. Now, I was never a big fan of the first album, The Principle of Evil Made Flesh, which was kind of a more death metallic, but not a really good one. I mean, I came from a very different kind of death metal background, it seems, and I never got to like it. That is, when I got Vampire, or The Empire, and I got to like that a lot, like really a lot. And I don't remember whether it was Dusk and Her Embrace before I got The Principle of Evil Made Flesh, or the other way around, and it doesn't really matter. What was matterful for me is that the debut album never kind of did the trick for me, and as such, that's not something I want to feature here. But Dusk, the second album, which I kind of consider a classic album, I think many people do, even though I'm quite sure that a lot of people will also hate it, because, well, Cradle of Filth's signature style. But still, I think it's a very meaningful album in so many ways, because that, at least, finally, if you can say that, kind of opened the doors to new ways of, well, doing very symphonic, extreme metal, and also create this style that was stirring before it, but this was actually kind of like finalizing it, if that makes sense. Now, everything from the cover image here to the track lists and all kind of underline the feeling that this is about as gothic extreme metal as it can be. That is, it was clearly dealing with the topics of black metal and also flirting with the topics such as death, vampires, and, gothic romances and all that stuff. So it must have been very weird for a lot of people. But also because of that, it felt very fresh. I mean, compared to early 1980s bands, bands like Bathory or Celtic Frost, things like that. This was very different. And also, if you were to compare this to so many Norwegian and Swedish bands, or Finnish bands for that matter, coming, early to mid-90s, Cradle of Filth was definitely into something different. Rather than singing about the kind of a basic folky tunes, folk black, what so many Norwegian bands do, or just pure Satan worshipping, or, burning down the churches and stuff like that. This was more about these kind of castles and vampires and romantic moonlight and what have you. And it was still definitely going into the darker aspects of mankind and all that. And they did it with quality. They did it with style, they did it with understanding. You know, how to take this into a whole next level, rather than just, do very basic kind of a thing. So, how it seems to me, nowadays and already back in then, but even more nowadays, is that these guys knew and understood how to create a brand. Not brand as a Pepsi Cola or Coca Cola or McDonald's, but to make it all look different, make it sound different, and more importantly, make good music. Now, be it about the melodies, and this album features quite a lot, very, very nice ones, or have these high tempo parts. Talented drummer. I mean, Nick Barker clearly has a good touch with, drums. Sometimes it's just pretty basic when you compare it to nowadays extreme metal. But back in the days, it was clear that this was a band with really, really good drummer. Now, of course, in black metal, there are lots of good drummers. But I would still say Nick Barker is definitely challenging them. And maybe as it is with, Dark Throne, the kind of a death metal background really helped that. Having more technical approach rather than just blast beating it in very simple ways. Obviously, we have good drummers such as Frost from Satyricon, who also had really great stuff. But the point here is, these drummers don't sound like, one alike. They all have their own style, and that is one of the things which also serves Cradle of Filth. Have this kind of a technical output, but not going like drum pornography in that sense. And, having those different parts just fit together perfectly. Now, I know Danny Field's very high-pitchy, screamy vocals are not for everybody. For example, not for me. I can totally respect his style, but I kind of like them more back in the 1990s. But then I have either, changed my mind about it, or then I have just kind of become more picky. But they don't really work for me that well. But like I said, I like what the man is doing, and I like that he has his own personal style, which is not exactly something that you can say for most vocalists operating in black metal territory. Also, what is worthwhile noticing is that even though this is the second album by the band, the production is very, very solid. Like, actually this week, this week I'm filming this is gonna be out a little bit later, but let's say this month earlier I was listening to a black metal band Martyrium from Malta, and their fifth album, which is very, very much 2021 release, had synthesizer keyboard parts which were like, it felt like they were a lot older than Cradle of Filth style 1996. And mind you, this band is 25 years later coming out with an album. So it seems like this is very, very different. Whereas Cradle of Filth makes this sound like it's kind of proper orchestrations. There are cool spoken parts by men. Well, some of them are a little bit cringe. And also these really sexy and nice female spoken parts and all that. These all with these keyboards and, orchestrations feel like very, very different level than some bands in 2020s. So it seems like they were ahead of their time, like true pioneers in their own style. Obviously, these are related in one way or another. What Dimmu Borgir was doing and, still are doing with their kind of a symphonic black metal. One could even say they are also related to Emperor, but these all branched in different ways. Emperor went into more sophisticated style and kind of wanted to go more progressive. Dimmu Borgir maybe went more traditional, conservative ways, whereas Cradle of Filth expanded their gothic universe and made it sound their own, with monsters, with vampires, with these gothic tales, and flirting with romance, sex, eroticism, and all that stuff, which is pretty cool and unique in the sense that whereas there are a lot of bands that fantasize about, having sex with nun or some kind of a goat creature, raping this kind of a nun creature, whatever horrid stories you have, Cradle of Filth always had more like showing a little bit of skin, but not in a pornographic ways, more like a sensual ways. It's almost like the black metal version of Playboy magazine. I don't know if young people actually can remind that. Or anyway. Now the thing here is, Dusk and Her Embrace is fantastically created an album. So that is, it has all these different elements and they are nicely laid out with interesting melodies, with cool keyboard parts, with these spoken parts. So there's a lot of things happening. It's a diverse creation which just uses so much different cool elements. And I think this could be really the peak moment for the band. Some of the later albums are pretty good as well, but there have been kind of low points. And for example, the new album feels like it's a more diluted version of what Cradle of Filth really was when they peaked. Now, all these praises by me, I still must say I don't have this on CD anymore. I haven't had for a lot of time. I mean, maybe 15, 20 years or so. Why so? Because I kind of got bored of it. That's not so much because of their skill and talent, but because I kind of got fed of it. I mean, now that I was listening to it a couple of times if we were making this video, I kind of got back feeling a little bit even nostalgic, like, yeah, this was me being 21 or so. And back in the days, I can kind of get that feeling again, like, yeah, I kind of understand why I like this. And while I still like it to a certain degree, I can't say like it's wow, 9 out of 10, because for me it is not. So it's more about me saying, yes, this is a definite classic album, and I think a lot of people should revisit this album or maybe listen to it for the first time if you haven't been listening to it. But for me, it doesn't really do the trick that it used to do. Maybe I was never the right type for Cradle of Filth. Maybe I'm too much into thrash and death metal and, well, raw end of black metal than what Cradle of Filth is offering. Be it as may, I still like to say that this is a classic album and I like what the guys are doing here. I like their talent, their passion, their ways of creating something unique, something that stands out from the crowd. And as such, I think Cradle of Filth has totally deserved their success, being one of the most successful black metalish bands ever. I mean, check out the numbers on Spotify listens or how many fans they have on Facebook and you get the idea. Now, definitely go check it out. Cradle of Filth's second album from 1996, Dusk and Her Embrace. Can't say it's for everybody. It's not everybody even in black metal territory or scene, but it's an interesting album and it's definitely a pioneer work. So here it is, classic review, rating Dusk and Her Embrace, a classic album. Take care and enjoy it.